1860 to 1861, Pony Express, founded by Russell, Majors, and Waddell, freight and stagecoach magnates, carried mail across the 2,000-mile route between Missouri and California in 10 days. However, with the completion of the transcontinental telegraph, the Pony Express became obsolete just days later. The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, was a turning point not just in the political life of the nation but also in its communications infrastructure. The postal system, which had been a symbol of national unity and a vital revenue-generating federal institution, was fractured along sectional lines, forcing both the Union and the Confederacy to build and operate separate mail systems, each with its own political, logistical, and financial challenges. December 1860 to April 1861, Southern states begin to secede. May 1861, the Confederate government creates its own post office department. June 1, 1861, the U.S. Post Office formally ceases mail service to Confederate states. Postmaster General Montgomery Blair, who served from 1861 until 1864, oversaw the purge of Southern postmasters and redirected mail routes around the Confederate territories. Mail volume initially dropped in 1861 but quickly recovered due to increased use of mail by Union soldiers and their families. When the Civil War broke out, it caused widespread uncertainty and fear in both the North and South. Americans, fearing inflation or economic collapse, hoarded gold, silver, and even copper coins. As a result, small change disappeared from circulation, especially in cities, where commerce relied on coins for daily transactions. Merchants and citizens simply couldn't make change anymore. Even 1 cent and 5 cent coins became scarce. The war strained the banking system, and there was no central bank. The Second Bank of the U.S. had been dissolved in 1836. Wildcat banknotes from private banks flooded the economy, but their value varied wildly depending on the issuing institution. People were reluctant to accept unfamiliar or unsecured paper money. Coins were the trusted standard. With coins vanishing, citizens and merchants started improvising, using postage stamps as makeshift currency, wrapping them in foil or affixing them to small cards. Stamps were uniform, government-issued, and had fixed values, making them a logical substitute for coins. Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase called this ad hoc practice a natural but illegal currency. Congress responded to the crisis with the Postal Currency Act, July 17, 1862, its official title, an act to authorize payments in stamps and to provide for the redemption thereof. The act legalized the use of postage and fractional currency in small denominations and enabled the Treasury to print and distribute official postal currency, a stopgap until coins returned to circulation. Stamps could be used as legal tender for small debts up to $5. The fractional currency, paper notes, were printed in values of 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents. The first designs even looked like postage stamps, featuring portraits of Franklin, Jefferson, and Washington. This was the first time postage was used as legal currency in U.S. history. It demonstrated how the Postal Service could serve not just communication, but also economic and financial roles. Eventually, by the mid-1860s, coin minting resumed, and the need for postal currency declined. But it set a precedent for emergency currency solutions during future crises. Postmaster General John H. Reagan, and former U.S. Congressman from Texas, built the Confederate Post Office Department from scratch and managed it well, organized, and initially profitable. In 1863, hyperinflation, mail disruptions due to Union blockades, and economic collapse crippled the Confederate postal operations until the service was largely rendered non-functional, especially in areas under Union control. The Post Office Department remained solvent throughout the war. Continued expansion westward, even during conflict. Postal money orders were even introduced in 1864 under Postmaster General Montgomery Blair during the Civil War to improve financial security. Postal money orders turned early post offices into de facto financial institutions, especially in rural America. The system was designed to securely transfer money at a time when banking infrastructure was unreliable or inaccessible for many Americans. While no single individual is solely credited with inventing the American version, the system was heavily inspired by the British Post Office, which had introduced money orders in 1838 to reduce theft, prevent forgery, and allow the working class to send money safely across long distances. In the 19th century, especially before the National Bank Acts, 1863-64, the country was filled with local, unstable wildcat banks. The post office did not lend money or hold accounts, but it functioned as a secure remittance and disbursement system. In many small towns and frontier areas, where there were no banks at all, post offices became the only federally connected institutions and seen as trusted hubs by the people. The post-war period saw modernization, rural expansion, and eventually free mail delivery in cities. After the 1830s, the U.S. postal system began to revolutionize its services by embracing emerging technologies, transforming from a slow, horseback-based operation into a modern communications infrastructure. By the mid-1830s, railroads began replacing stagecoaches and horseback riders for medium and long-distance mail. The U.S. Post Office began contracting private railroads to carry mail, starting with experimental routes. By the 1850s, dedicated railway post offices, RPOs, were introduced. Special mail cars where clerks sorted mail in transit, a revolutionary leap in efficiency. Enabled direct mail delivery to towns along rail lines without needing to route through central hubs. Mail by sea had traditionally been slow and depended on wind. In the 1830s, the post office began using steamships for coastal mail service, transatlantic mail, especially to Europe. In 1844, the first long-distance telegraph line was completed, Washington, D.C. Baltimore. Telegraphy allowed instant transmission of messages. The post office didn't operate telegraphs directly but often co-located telegraph offices and post offices. The telegraph didn't replace mail, but it forced the postal system to speed up, specialize, and adapt. 1847, U.S. signs ocean mail contracts with companies like Collins Line and Pacific Mail Steamship Company. 1851 to 1860, steamships dominate routes to California, the Gulf, and Europe. This globalized the American postal system and connected citizens to international news and markets.